Here at Helmuth Ford, we are a small town dealership with no hassle and no pressure.
The Watch Your Opera House presents the Old Man Band this Saturday, November 16th at 7 p.m. Old Man Band has been bringing their good time music to fans in East Central Iowa since 2018. Tickets are just $10 and can be purchased at watchyouroperahouse.org and also at the door. The concert's sponsor is Kelowna Auto Used Cars and Trucks. It's Old Man Band this Saturday, November 16th at 7 p.m. at the Watch Your Opera House. Retro Antique Tour, a shop hop adventure, Christmas edition, is this Friday and Saturday, November 15th and 16th, with stops in Oskaloosa, Pella, New Sharon, Ottumwa, and Lytton. The Retro Antique Tour is designed for people to discover hidden gems in shops and communities in a well-organized and distinctive antique shopping experience. Get more information at brushedbyjude.com. It's the Retro Antique Tour this Friday and Saturday, November 15th and 16th. Attention, please! We have an update on Santa Steve's stocking.
Ho, ho, ho!
Santa Steve's stocking is going to be full of a prize package valued at $1,000! $500 in gift cards. Hallelujah! $500 in cash! With 20 different outlets to register at. More details coming soon.
Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast, 9 o'clock here, Central Time Zone on the 13th of November. Just a few things, kind of housekeeping things here. Obviously just thank you to those of you that do watch and comment and listen, do everything. And we just ask you to rate, review, subscribe to your favorite podcast player, to the YouTube page, to the Facebook page, Instagram, all the different things that we do on here. Trying to do a little bit more. Like Trevor was at the Rose Bowl last week. We put a picture of him up there. I went to the Iowa State game on Monday. We'll touch on that. And just trying to get some pictures up there. And it's fun to do. Just subscribe and share and try to have your family and friends to subscribe and listen and like our stuff as well. It does help out, and we do appreciate that. Trev, how's it going out in Colorado? And you had a good trip to California, except for the game. And Iowa State had the same problems. The game wasn't good. I'm glad I ended up not going to Kansas City because it was just a disaster. And we'll get to that later. But first, how was your trip to the Rose Bowl?
Oh, the trip was good. The game was fun for about the first 10 minutes, of course, and it was kind of downhill from there. The Rose Bowl, it's a cool spot. Tailgating there is pretty cool. I didn't get too crazy or anything, but walked around a little bit before the game. And the start of the game, there was definitely more Iowa fans. By the time the second quarter got going, the stadium was pretty much filled up to capacity of where it was going to be. They had the end zones blocked off just because you're not going to get over 100,000 fans there on a Friday night for a regular season game. But it was probably 50-50 at that point. And now, like I said, for about 10 minutes, the game was fun, and then Iowa just got bullied around. And that's the second time that's really happened this year with teams that are either on their level or that they typically are better at, with Michigan State and UCLA. So it's still cool to go to the Rose Bowl, but I'm 0 for 2 there now in my career.
How much different? I mean, obviously the time was different, so it was already dark when the game started. Obviously, when you're playing in the Rose Bowl game at the Rose Bowl, it's just a different setting. You've got two really good teams that were at that time in 2015 were almost in the playoff, just missed it. Some of the best players in Iowa history, some of the, maybe the best player in Stanford history with McCaffrey. How much different was everything on Friday night compared to that?
It was a lot less people, of course. I mean, tailgating lots were pretty wide open. When we went there in 2015, it was packed full, fans of both teams. So you can tell Southern California there, LA, tailgating, it's just a different vibe than it is in Iowa because there's a lot more to do in California. So the vibe was still good. Like I said, it was still fun to walk around the Rose Bowl. The one thing that they do have going is they've got super wide walkways around the stadium. So that kind of helps with the crowd, especially when there was only, I don't know how many people were there on Friday night. I never heard if they did announce it at the game. I don't know if they did on the TV broadcast or not, but call it 50 or 60,000. I mean, it's pretty easy to walk around the stadium. I did a couple laps. I actually bought the cheapest ticket I could find, and then I sat on the Iowa side, the UCLA side, and I sat in both end zones because they did have partial sections of the end zones open. So I kind of like to do that now. Buy a cheap ticket if you can, move around, and if somebody comes and wants their seat, you just get up and move to another spot.
Yeah, it's good to get different perspectives, and again, it's not a place that you always get to. It's not your stadium that like the back of your hand or anything. So, yeah, I'm glad you had fun. Games, like you said, game started off really well, up 10-0, and then it went downhill from there. Some things weren't so surprising. UCLA's run defense is really good, so Caleb Johnson struggling wasn't a surprise. As much as he did struggle was a surprise, I think. But he wasn't going to go have 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't think anybody expected that because they're really good on defense, run defense. Brendan Sullivan getting knocked around and then eventually out of the game did not help the cause because he needed to be able to throw the ball to win that football game. And then I think Jackson Stratton, I think his name, came in, looked pretty good. And the funniest thing I've heard listening to sports talk and everything since is all the fans wanted, every time it looked like Kirk Ferentz was talking to him or a coach was saying something, all the fans were like, no, don't talk to him because he was doing well. And then most quarterbacks have started out really well, but as soon as they get coached up by the Iowa coaches, they're out. So it's like Kirk Ferentz, I think maybe early in the week or something, had said something about not really even knowing who the guy is because he was playing linebacker on scout team or something. They don't want the coaches to touch the quarterback because they get worse. That was kind of funny to listen to.
Yeah, Sullivan having those turnovers really put us in a tough hole. And, only at Iowa can you go from Cade McNamara, you think the season's over, to Brandon Sullivan, where you have 2 really good games, and then all of a sudden you've got a linebacker playing quarterback. Only at Iowa could you get that. So I would hope Sullivan's going to play the rest of the year. I guess I haven't heard. I
don't know if he is.
If he's healthy, I don't know if he is either. But if he is healthy, I mean, I want him to start just because, he can come back next year. But, yeah, it was fun for about 10 minutes. But, again, Iowa getting bullied around on both sides of the ball. That's twice this year. And it just – I don't know. It's been a weird season for Iowa. One of the weirder ones I can remember.
And they played really, really good at home. And, I mean, even in the loss to Iowa State, they didn't play great in the second half. And there's some questionable calls there. But they didn't play horrible. But they played really bad on the road for the most part. And that's the surprising part, how different they look at home on the road.
Yeah, this was a game you and I both had circled before the season. We both chalked this one up to an L when we did our preseason predictions. So Friday night out west, we've seen all the records on teams that have to travel, the Big Ten teams especially, what their record is. It's not very good when they have long travels. So that part wasn't as surprising. But to see Iowa get bullied around, again, if they were playing Ohio State or something, that's a little bit different because the talent level, there's such a big gap. But when it's UCLA and Michigan State, when you get bullied around like that, it is a little bit eye-opening. And I felt like we've talked about this for a few years, but it almost felt like the official beginning of the end of the Ferentz era. And listen, he could come back and coach 2, 3, 4 more years, and he could have another 9 or 10 season win in there in those years. But this one felt different to me. Maybe it's just because I was there, though.
You're not the only one to say that. And I remember this. I wasn't following it great. I just started at Iowa State and everything. But Trent Condon, who's on KXNO, brought this up at the end of the Fry era. 96, I think they had a pretty good year with Tim Dwight, Tavian Banks. And then 97, most of those guys all came back. And they just had an okay year. I think they ended 7-5, something like that. Much like this year. Not as good as they should have been, but it was really, it wasn't bad. Still a bowl game. Not what they should have been, but not too bad. And then one more year, I think they went like 3-9. Iowa State finally beat them. And that's not a situation now because they don't have a 15-game winning streak like they had at that time. But just, I think they went like 3-9, and then it was Hayden Fry's last year, and the cupboard was bare. There was nothing left. Ferentz came in, went like 2-29 in his first 31 games, something like that, and then turned it around. But it took him a couple years just because the cupboard was so bare. And he was starting to relate that, last year, really good, but there was some fluky stuff, maybe a little smoke and mirrors. This year, a little bit more back to reality, a couple bounces here, there, but not as good a year as they wanted. Next year, looking at all the 6-year seniors and 5th-year seniors, and you're not getting that bonus COVID year anymore after this year, I don't believe. I think this is the end of it. Who is going to come back next year? You got to recruit, you got transfer portal, everything. So it's easier to change up your team compared to like 98. But next year could be a struggle. And then, does Ferentz retire then? And you got to get a new coach, and it's history repeating itself 25 years later. And that was just, I hadn't thought of it in that situation, but potentially Trent Condon there is not incorrect.
Yeah, it's on the board. And, we talked about this a couple times when we're talking about the top teams in the country, how I don't necessarily think there was a great team this year compared to some others because of the NIL and the transfer portal. So that doesn't just go for the top teams. That goes for every team in the country. So I was going to lose guys or maybe have a tough time getting them in. If you don't bring the right ones, next year could be another disappointing season. So it's on the board. And yeah, I don't know. Iowa's a top 25 program of the last 25 years without question because of Kirk Ferentz. But it feels like the ceiling's been hit for a couple of years now. And you almost wonder if the ceiling is going to start to lower a little bit.
Yeah, it's very questionable. And Hawk fans are a fickle bunch. And 1 week they're high as a kite, and they think you got the new quarterback. He's going to lead you the end of this year, get better, win out, go win a bowl game, and then lead them into next year and ready to go. And now this year it's fire everybody. And I think this is my prediction. This Saturday, they don't play, have a bye. November 23rd, when they trot onto the field as an offense, Cade McNamara will be the quarterback. That is my call right now. I think Brendan Sullivan's pretty hurt. I wouldn't be shocked if he has a concussion. I know they're looking at his ankle as well. They said McNamara was lifting again and felt good. Obviously, it's not guaranteed that he's healthy yet either. Concussions are funny. Because you might feel good for 3 days, but then all of a sudden your headache comes back, and then you're out again. You kind of have to start that process over. So quarterback very much in doubt, but if I had to put money on it right now, I would say Cade McNamara starts at Maryland. And I don't think that is a good feeling for Hawkeye fans.
No, it's not. I mean, if Sullivan can play, I want him to because he can come back next year. At this point, I'm not even really worried if Iowa wins or loses the final 2 games. I mean, I want him to win the final 2. But what's more important to me is Sullivan getting some playing time, if he is healthy, to build into next year. An 8-4, 7-5 year this season doesn't make a lot of difference to me. In years past, it would. 8-4, I always say, is kind of the bar. At least get to 8-4, if not better. But I would be willing, if somebody told me Cade can start the last 2 and you go 2-0, or Sullivan can start the last 2 and you go 1-1, I want to start Sullivan just to build on what could potentially happen next year for the team.
Yeah, for the best of the program going forward, Sullivan needs to play. Doesn't matter what the record is. That might not be the best for this team right now, but for the program, you have to see what you have with Brendan Sullivan.
Yeah, I'd like to see him play if he can. But, if it's close and if the team does feel Cade gives us the best chance to win, Ferentz he's gonna try to do everything he can, especially for the seniors, to try to win the last two and go to a better bowl game. Kirk's always been big about that. Seniors getting playing time, doing right by them. So it'll be a balance. But nothing against Cade. I'd like to see Sullivan in there to, like I said, build a little bit up for next year, and hopefully we could have some hope at quarterback next year, even if it doesn't turn out well.